My name is John Boozman, and I was born in Shreveport, Louisiana on 12/10/50. My dad was in the military and stationed at that base at that time, and so we were there for a short time, and that's where I arrived. I was blessed. I had a very loving family. My mom and dad were just wonderful. They grew up in a difficult time, grew up during the Depression. My dad started working when he was 9. He talked his mom into allowing him to join the National Guard when he was 17. They immediately mobilized. He said he was 19. They immediately mobilized him for World War II. He was in the Guard unit in Ozark, 142nd. And they immobilized him for World War II. He was a junior in high school, went off and wound up as a waist gunner on B-17s, got through that, and then stayed in the military. My mom was an only child in the sense that her dad was gassed at the end of World War I, right at the end of the war, was in the hospital for a couple of weeks, pushed back out, and then died 2 or 3 years later as a result of that. So had tuberculosis when she was probably 17, given a year to live. Was so weak that she told me that she literally could not sit up for a year. Lost a lung, beat that, and then lived well into her late 80s. So tough bunch, but grew up in a difficult time, but really could not have been a better example for my brother and sister and I. They were people of faith. They loved their family and worked really hard. One of the things that you realize as you get older is the sacrifice of your parents. Things you didn't realize they were doing then that really did make a big difference for my brother and sister and I. Well, I was the middle child, so traditionally they kind of get along. My brother was 4 years older than I, and then I have a younger sister that was 2 years younger. And so, again, we're blessed. We had a family that got along very well together. My brother was an overachiever. He was a great example for me, in every sense. So he was a big brother and a best friend. He and I had the opportunity to work together for many, many years. And then my sister, is somebody that we've remained very, very close through the years. And so, that was just really a very good experience. Let me talk a little bit about how I grew up, and since it was a little unusual. My dad was in the Army Air Corps. That changed into the Air Force. He stayed in, did 23 years. So we spent 6 years in London, and this was after World War II, and they were still rationing. There wasn't any heat, things like that. Food was rationed, the whole bit. I can remember playing in the bunkers of a bombed out London. We actually lived in London. My dad didn't like the base schools, so he put my brother and I in a British boys' school right down the street. And so all of my friends were English. I was going to an English school. I really became an English kid. So I was there 6 years, came back here in the 3rd or 4th grade. My brother was captain of the cricket team. And so because of that, we really got a great foundation regarding our academic studies. And, they were very, very serious about academics in England at that time. And so I think that was a great help for us as we came back and then got acclimated in the public school system. I was in a situation where, you get back and, again, I'm an English kid. I actually skipped a year because academically we were, doing well. And so I'd never seen a football or a baseball or any of those things, growing up, rounders, cricket, those kind of things, I could participate in. So really what happened to me was I found that I had a gift in probably the 4th or 5th, 6th grade I had no athletic ability except for hitting people. And I actually did pretty well at that and went on, played football in high school and then had the opportunity to get a scholarship to the University of Arkansas. I was pre-dental. I wanted to become a dentist. My brother was in medical school. And again, he was a just a good friend and a good person, great example for me in every way. But he called me one night when I was at the university and said, "John, I've decided to go into ophthalmology. I'm going to be an eye surgeon. You should go into optometry." And I said, "Well, and then he said, we can work together." Okay. So I said, "Well, that sounds good. I'll go to whichever one accepts me first." I didn't even know what an optometrist was at the time. So I got into optometry school, and we both graduated at the same time. We wanted to go back to Fort Smith. That's where I grew up. I was at Darby and Northside, and but we didn't feel like we could make a living. And so we were going to interview at a place looking at a practice in Harrison, Arkansas. Drove through here, and as a courtesy, really just as a courtesy, there was an individual, a guy named Dr. Casebeer, who was an ophthalmologist here, who was going to retire and go to Arizona. And we stopped by just to kind of look, and liked the place a whole bunch. Like so many, this is such a familiar story for those that have settled in the area. Liked it so much that we didn't even go to Harrison. We just, after a day said, let's work this out, and wound up acquiring his practice. So it wasn't, I'd like to say that we planned this for years and this and that. It was just kind of the Lord taking care of us. I tell people I've made a lot of mistakes. I've done a lot of things in my life, but moving to Northwest Arkansas certainly was, something that really worked out well for us. Well, I started playing football in the boys club, and the boys clubs, girls clubs now, those are such important programs. I think more important now than ever because of the fact, that families are so busy. But I started playing boys club football, and then I was really blessed. So much of life is just being at the right place at the right time. And I was a fairly big kid, all those kind of things, but I had great coaching. And that coaching started in junior high, went to Northside. Northside was a school that had a very, very good athletic program. I worked harder than I wanted to work, was driven so hard by my coaches. And so because of that, I had the opportunity to go to the University of Arkansas. I tell people at Arkansas I've got two claims to fame. My offensive line coach, the last 2 years I was there, the 2 years he was there, it was Joe Gibbs, the great coach that went on to win, I think, 3 Super Bowls and this and that. I tell people that myself and 2 or 3 other people that he was coaching were so uncoachable that he got frustrated and left college football as a result of us to go to the pros. And if he were here, sadly, he would nod his head. I tell him he needs to give me some of his retirement, based on that. But he would nod his head in agreement. The other claim to fame was the quarterback was Joe Ferguson, who was a great football player and just he's a great person. Played in the NFL as a quarterback for 19 years, one of the longest playing quarterbacks ever. Just a great athlete. I was the offensive left tackle for him. So I was just like the guy, for those that saw the movie The Blind Side, only I never got any better. My guy would run over me. Joe would have to run for his life. So I was the guy that taught him how to scramble. And I tell him, you should give me part of your retirement pay. I made you so much better in that aspect. And sadly, he would agree with that too. But I had a great experience at the University of Arkansas. Again, I had great coaches, people that had a profound, impact on my life. People like Coach Broyles, Coach Matthews, really just constantly instilling on you the value of working together. So much work. That's a difficult thing. Working as a team, and then again achieving great things as a result of that. Well, my brother Faye and I started the clinic along with my brother-in-law, who was the business manager, Mike Malone. And then we started growing. We merged with one of my brother's best friends, an ophthalmologist named Bill Hoff. And so it became the Boozman Hoff Eye Clinic. And from us, from a very simple beginning, because of the growth of the the area. You could do anything around here and be successful. But we grew dramatically and wound up with 10 doctors, eye clinic, and we're really taking care of a good part of this country, this part of the country. And so that really helped me in the sense that as I decided to run for Congress later on, we had great name recognition. I grew up in Fort Smith, and so I was fairly well known there because of the university and things. And then coming to Northwest Arkansas, having the clinic, the two areas that you had to be successful in the 3rd District were those areas. That's where all of the Republican votes were at that time. It's hard to imagine that, until 2010, we were probably maybe the most Democratic state in the country. During the early 2000s, till 2010, I was the only elected official above county judge in Arkansas. So things have changed a lot now, but we worked hard, and the clinic was a big reason that I was able to be successful. I was on the school board and the fair board. I was interested in the community. I have three daughters, and they were all in public school, and I didn't get on the school board because I had a beef with the school board. I had 2 friends that were rotating off, and so I was asked, would I run, and thought about it and just jumped in, just in an effort to be helpful. And the area then was growing so much. We had a very diverse school board, and Joy Kelly was the chairman of the chairwoman of the board, did an outstanding job. She had me come and sit by her, I think just to keep an eye on me and make sure I behaved. But she became a very, very dear friend and just did a tremendous job. And I learned so much from her, just sitting there. She was so patient. It was we would have meetings where at times, people were upset and this and that. She always heard them out. Sometimes, she didn't agree at all with what they were saying. Sometimes she did. But she always listened to everybody, gave them the opportunity to speak and be heard. And people, that's what people want, it's just to be able to express their opinion. So we had a very diverse school board, some very conservative people on there, some very liberal people. But I can't really remember a time that we didn't eventually come to an agreement, working together. And so the school board is unique, as an individual, have no power. If you can get 3 others to vote with you, then you've got absolute power in the school system. So it was just a great learning opportunity for me, and I think history tells us that during that period we had a very successful, and now that's something we can be very, very proud of the schools in the area and the great job that they do.
So talk about who was the supers and kind of what were your issues.
Mr. Tillery initially, Roland Smith came in, and then ultimately Dr. Darr. And so they were all very different in their approach. Mr. Tillery had been an assistant for many, many years when Rogers was a small place. Roland Smith came in, and he was an outsider. He was from Illinois, had a totally different way of doing things. And again, I think it was helpful in the sense of, having an outside force. And then Dr. Darr came in and did a tremendous job. She had served under both of those. And I think it, had assimilated both of those styles. And as a result, while I was a school board member, and I think, since then, we've really been blessed with great leadership in our schools. Regarding the school board, I'm in Washington, and I tell people, we can be talking about all of the problems that we've got overseas. We can talk about Iran, we can talk about Ukraine, whatever's going on, our domestic problems, but it's not near as difficult as cheerleader problems at the high school. So it was a great learning opportunity. Well, there was a time in Arkansas where everyone was a Democrat except for John Hammerschmidt, who did a tremendous job. Was just such a good person, and it's been a great influence on me in the sense of how he conducting himself, how he ran his office, just taking care of people. But in those early days, in 1977, there were very few Republicans in the state. The concentration of Republicans was in Northwest Arkansas, but not so much then. And so Arkansas was a very conservative state, though. Most of the South started to go red under the Clinton years. President Clinton was a favorite son, was well liked in Arkansas, and I think that's one of the reasons that Arkansas didn't go down that route, although again a very conservative state. So it is hard to believe that. I think in 2010 even, I think there was only about 18% of the office holders in Arkansas that were actually Republicans. So very, very low numbers. But again, you had Democrats that were involved. You had conservative Democrats, liberal Democrats. The conservative Democrats outranked the liberal. And so we had a very, very conservative state. Eventually, as things, I think as the Democratic Party got more liberal, then you had, a number of Arkansans leave and become the red state that we are. Well, it's really unusual. Asa Hutchinson was he was the congressman from the 3rd District. Asa was asked by President Bush to become head of the Drug Enforcement Agency, which he accepted. That created a vacancy. And so I had 2 or 3 friends that had, been looking at this. My brother was political, but I wasn't political at all. And so I encouraged them, to go ahead and run and things, just as friends do. But eventually they all dropped out and basically said, why don't you do it? And so I just did it. And until I'd gotten elected, I'd never really been to Washington. So I was, a true outsider, just jumped in and did it, and was fortunate because of having good name recognition through the clinic, being active in the community on the school board, fair board, having, being fairly well known at Fort Smith, where I actually from. All of it worked out. But it was not I went home and told my wife I was thinking about running for Congress. And I thought she'd tell me to go cut the yard or something, but she said, okay. So we just jumped in and did it. Now, I'm so blessed. I've got, my wife puts up with a lot, and she has been so supportive. She and I have been together since I was 16. We started dating when I was this summer before our senior year in high school. And so nobody's been more supportive. My 3 daughters have been tremendous. And it's, I was blessed because I got into politics really when I was in a situation. My youngest daughter was a second semester of her junior year in high school. And so, unlike so many of my friends, have young kids, essentially you're just not home. I'm gone 3 or 4 days a week at least. And so because of that, it's really difficult when you have young children. I was blessed that my children were in college, and my youngest one, went to college. So I really didn't have, as much nagging responsibility that way, okay? Which again was very, very helpful.
So talk about that first race. Who all did you run against, and what were some of the issues? Wasn't Dick Barclay one of the, who else besides him?
Dick, then Senator Hendren, then Senator Gunnar DeLay from Fort Smith. And so we were blessed. I don't really know that we were that different, regarding the issues. All of that bunch, were pretty conservative, pretty well known. And so I didn't really know what I was getting into. Sometimes you probably wouldn't get into things, if you knew what you were facing. But we were just blessed. We were able to get our message out. And I think through, name recognition, we're just able to get it done. Those 3 kind of split their vote, and then I was able to take, a different vote, I guess, and ultimately did it. We ran against Mike Haythorne, who was a very talented young politician at the time, and so we were blessed. And that was not a given at that time, in the sense as it is now. Running for the 3rd district, it's so conservative. You get through the primary, and it's very difficult for a Democrat to win in the 3rd district of Arkansas now. That was not the case then. In fact, I was the only Republican in the delegation for many years. So it was a for real race. We worked really hard. Senator Lincoln was a good friend. It's hard to understand that, but we worked closely with her. Again, I was the only Republican in the delegation. I actually got along better with the Democrats in the delegation than they did among themselves, because as we tried to get things for Arkansas, it was a different pot of money. I took it from the Republicans. They were fighting amongst themselves. And I say that they weren't really fighting, but again, they were competing against themselves, for different things. So I was the outsider. And the other thing that really helped me, I think, in the race against Senator Lincoln was, and I didn't realize it at the time, I was the only Republican in the delegation. So I worked hard to help them, bring things to Arkansas. And everybody that came to Washington felt like they need to come by and see me, because as the only Republican with a President Bush in power, things were going through me to get things done. Okay, I had direct contact with President Bush. So everybody, it didn't matter if you were from Little Rock or Pine Bluff or Jonesboro, you name it, would come through and talk to me when they were in Washington about their various issues.
From both sides, you mean?
From both sides, yes, sir. So it helped me. I think, represented the whole state, because of that. And so that made it that much easier with my name recognition and drawing support from the donors I needed, the this and that, as we ran against Senator Lincoln. I think Senator Hutchinson was one of the really keys. He was able to win a state Senate seat in Bentonville, and back then, again, all of these seats were held by Democrats, and so he just went door to door, worked very, very hard, and then from that was able to become the congressman succeeding John Paul Hammerschmidt. John Paul Hammerschmidt was such a great inspiration. I think he's a person, even now in Congress, he's passed away, been gone for so many years. I'll run into old timers in Congress that served with him or staffed the committees that were on to ask about him. And, he was somebody that when you have people like that, that are in significant positions, they become the example, and it makes it easier for all of us. So there were a number of people that forged the trail, but it was just a lot of hard work, a lot of door-to-door banging on doors, and to get things done. Well, there's all kinds of issues going on in this part of the country, and the thing that we've dealt with so much is growth, infrastructure. We're blessed. We've had leadership on both sides, Democrats and Republicans, working together to really make this the place that it's become. This is one of the fastest growing areas in the country. I get asked about it all the time. Right now, I'm out and about traveling with the Farm Bill. I've been in many, many states talking about the importance of us passing the big Farm Bill. But all of those people, I can tell I can tell them where I'm from. They immediately know, which is really remarkable, that this little area that was, when I moved in 1977, I think that Rogers had one stoplight, Bentonville didn't have any. Just a very, very small place. So I think infrastructure has been really important. Orderly growth, all of the things that come about is that. Serving on the school board, I'm very aware of the importance of education and again, making sure that we have the orderly growth that's required. The list just goes on and on. Well, one of the things that we've been so fortunate in this part of the country has been the cooperation among cities. And as I deal with the various communities, they understand that what's good for one is good for all. And it's really unique. I've traveled the state as much as anybody and have really gotten to know the various regions of Arkansas extremely well. It's unusual. They're starting to adopt that model throughout the state because it's been so successful here. But when you have the communities working together, whether it was with the big water issues with the Illinois River, Oklahoma, Arkansas, when they came together with that issue, when they've come together on transportation issues, we're blessed. You can essentially travel a single road and get from Bentonville all the way to Fayetteville now. That's just the planning of how you work all those things together. And so Northwest Council has been instrumental in that. You've had the leadership of our major corporations coming together and say, hey, let's decide on what we need to get done. We'll support it in all kinds of ways. Our community support it in all kinds of ways. And the result of that, I think we really are unique here. And it's a great example, not only for the rest of Arkansas, but for the rest of the country. People talk to me about transportation. I was on the transportation committee in Congress, in the House. Now I'm on the Environment and Public Works committee, the Transportation Committee in the Senate. But the best example of what a good road project will do is the interstate between Alma, coming up through northwest Arkansas. It wasn't too long ago that you had to travel on Old Highway 71 to get here. We would not have grown if that would continue. It was all of us that were traveling that back in those days, invariably you'd see a truck wreck or this or that. That two-lane highway was at full capacity. Through Congressman Hammerschmidt's work and lots of other people's work, we were able to get that four-lane, fixed. Now we're trying to get it all the way down to New Orleans. Myself and several others have worked so that from Alma it goes all the way up to the Canadian border, okay? But that connector really was the difference in northwest Arkansas being allowed to grow. You combine that, and again, that was supported by the Northwest Council. You combine that with the airport. Coming together as a region, getting a regional airport. I can remember when Senator McCain laughed, and that was the big joke. The airport to nowhere. And that the airport here, the regional airport, is really the poster child of the FFA. They love this airport because it's a great example of fulfilling a need and doing all of the right things in order to grow it and make it such where it's the premier little airport in the country. The regional airport was really difficult, and it wouldn't have gotten done without the Northwest Council and then several individuals that stepped up. But it's been a game changer. One of getting the interstate, where we could get here, having good air connection amongst all of our cities, and we take that for granted now. But it's such a great resource. But no, it was difficult for those of us that were living, during that time and working towards it. It was really difficult. It was hard to get the various areas, the townspeople, to realize the importance of this going forward. But it makes a difference when when the business community, the leaders in that regard, people that most people have great respect for, when they came out and said, look, this is something we need to get done. They put their political capital behind it. Congressman Hammerschmidt and the rest of the delegation, our senators also were very, very helpful in that regard too. Beaver Lake is so important for so many different reasons. When I first moved here in 1977, Bella Vista was blowing and going. We had so many, we still have so many people that retire here. This is an area that people literally drive through, like my brother and I. You drive through in a matter of a day or two, you say, this is where we want to live. And part of that is just all of the amenities that we have, the quality of life issues good school system, low crime rate, all the things that we just take for granted that have been, so hard. But also one of the great jewels that we have is Beaver Lake. And just the ability to recreate there, that's been a great draw. But besides that, you have to have the infrastructure. You've got to have the water to make sure that you're able to, continue to serve the area. One of the things that we're working hard now is that the White River, Beaver Lake is undergoing a study, which they have to do before we can get more water out of there. So we're in the process of working hard to do that. Those are things that simply have to be done. It's a good story. It's going to get done. But it's one of the things that we take for granted that really has changed the area dramatically. And, we can be very proud of it because that just didn't happen. That was, the foresight of our, people that served much earlier than I did that were able to get that done. We're so blessed in Arkansas to have, for the most part, lots of water. We got lots of rivers and lakes and things, and so we take that for granted. The futurists, when you talk to them, the people that are looking forward into the future, the things that are important, that always, water and energy are number one or two. It doesn't matter who you talk to. I don't know how you could overestimate the impact of the Waltons. Mr. Walton was a great example, for all of us in the sense of how you do things regarding business, taking care of customers. I think his claim to fame was that he didn't care, what your education was. Many of the early people that worked for him had very little education, but they were really successful in retail business. So he chose, based on your abilities. And the other thing that he was so good about, he spent more time, I think, in his customers. He spent more time in his competition as much as he did his own stores. So he was in his own stores all the time, talking to stock boys, saying, what do we need to improve this place? Taking those ideas and then pushing that system-wide, and then constantly in his, with competition. But because of that, he was one of the people that were able to knit this whole area together through the Northwest Council, being one of the founders of that, in so many other ways, the philanthropy, Crystal Bridges, that's continued through Alice and the rest of the family. So we can be very, 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 very pleased and grateful for the fact that so many times you have, great success stories like that, and then the family moves someplace else as they acquire wealth. But they're committed to the area, and that really has made a tremendous, I don't think you can overestimate the impact that it's had. I'm blessed. I'm a regent on the Smithsonian. So Congress has, 3 or 4 people, whatever, that are appointed. We have 3 in the Senate. So I'm one of the regents. And so I really have a great appreciation for antiquities, okay? And so I get to visit with a lot of people that are really big time in that world. And they all ask about Crystal Bridges. They're so enamored with Crystal Bridges. They can't say enough nice things about Crystal Bridges. Their only wonderment is how could it be in small town Arkansas? And so they're excited about that in the sense that we desperately needed something like that, in this part of the country. And so now we've got people coming from all over the area that are able to really see some of the most significant artworks, not only in the United States, but some of the most significant artworks ever. So it's just a great asset for us, and it's something we can be very, very proud of. Well, the Senate is really a small body. There's 100 people there. Each side has about 50 on, we're fairly evenly divided, 49 to 51. On our side, we eat lunch 3 times a week together. You have committee hearings when you're working with both sides. And so you get to know people very, very well. It's almost like English class at high school. Everybody knows everybody. And so because of that, And the fact that in order to get any significant legislation passed in the Senate, you need 60 votes. So Democrats can't pass legislation on their own. Republicans can't pass legislation on their own. You simply have to work together to get things done. And right now we hear a lot about the rancor. We hear a lot about things aren't getting done. And yet, there's a lot of things that are very bipartisan. Agriculture is very bipartisan. Veterans are very bipartisan. We don't care if you're a Democrat veteran or a Republican veteran, or Democrat soldier or Republican soldier. These are people that have served our country. Agriculture is the same way. That's about regions of the country. Southern agriculture is different than Illinois, Iowa, Indiana. It's trying to get the different regions together and the different commodities. So there is a lot of working together. When you get into the social issues, primarily there's a lot of rancor, but overall there are a lot of good friendships. There is the ability to disagree without being disagreeable. I hope that there's hope in the future that we do get along better. I think Congress is just reflective of the country. We're a divided country. There's strong views on both sides, from the conservative wing of the Republicans, liberal wing of the Democrats, and all in between. And as a result, politics now are there is just a lot of disagreement. You can ask the average family on Thanksgiving, that's not the case. So it is what it is, and we run into these cycles. I talk to a lot of young people. I mentioned my parents. My mom grew up at a time, when there weren't any antibiotics. All of these dire diseases, polio, tuberculosis, all of these terrible things that happened. The Depression. When you and I were going through, you had Vietnam raging. You had much of the country on fire with social unrest. You had the weathermen, the anarchists, that were blowing up federal buildings. The draft. So all of that was very, very, it was not conducive to getting along. But we got through it. I think the one thing that I'm concerned about now that was different then, even with all of that, even with all of the social unrest then, people still had faith in their institutions. And I think right now, the biggest thing that we have to overcome is people don't have a lot of confidence in any of their institutions. And that goes for, just name one. And it's just not the way it used to be. So that's going to take leadership from all kinds of different peoples, all kinds of different entities to get us back on track there. We'll get there, but it's going to take a lot of work. We need to remember our history, and getting firsthand accounts, is so important. I wish that my dad was a waist gunner on B-17s, was in the service for 23 years, saw the service change so much, while he was in there. When he joined the Guard when he was 17, most of his officers were former cavalry officers. It's hard to believe, but actually rode horses and pulled weapons by horse, all of those kind of things, and the change that he saw. But again, getting the opportunity to see World War II through his eyes, getting the opportunity to see Vietnam, the Cold War, all of the different entities that we've been exposed to in the last several years, I think is really important. And the stories are remarkable. The other thing too is it's so great in the sense that you'll have an older veteran, maybe a World War II veteran that's in his 90s, sit down and talk about all of the remarkable things that they did. Tremendous casualty rates, got through all of that, and then they came back and rebuilt our country, provided the safety so that Europe could rebuild. But they didn't talk about this. Having neighbors that literally were with Patton the entire time, just in the thickest of the thick, but you never even knew they served. They just came back and truly are the greatest generation in that regard. But not only them, our Vietnam veterans that endured so much. The good thing about, I think, the veterans issues right now are that we're during a time where our veterans are one of the few entities that are held in high esteem. And, really are. I think that the general population understands their sacrifice. So anything we can do to help with that, that's what the Veterans History Project is all about. But also remembering, the sacrifice that's come before us, I think is really important. It's remarkable that as they tell their stories in the Veterans History Project, many times this is the first time that their family has ever heard anything about it. They just didn't talk about the war. So it is therapeutic for them. It's really helpful, I think, for their loved ones to understand, again, the sacrifice. As we talked about earlier, you don't realize the sacrifice of your parents and things as you get till you get older and look back. But this was something that, like I say, they didn't talk about. They just came back and did a tremendous job. So the other thing that we do, that we work on, is many of these individuals did not get the medals that they deserved. At the end of the war, everybody was trying, the war was over. Literally, you were told, there's the line that you can go home right now. If you want to do the paperwork and stuff, go to this other long line. And they just said, to heck with it. So the other thing we do is work on making sure that the medals that the individuals deserved, that they've actually got. And that's another thing I think that is really important for family legacy. So your listeners, if they've got somebody that they'd like, to get their loved ones medals or whatever, be sure and let us know. Those are things that we can help with. And the rest of the delegation will help with that also. Well, it's really remarkable. When I was first elected, things were so different regarding people's knowledge of Northwest Arkansas. And this was the time when, Walmart was recruiting heavily, Tyson's was growing, J.B. Hunt. Literally, they'd fly those people in the evening so they wouldn't pass all of the different entities that you passed as you drove into the area. And so we all remember those times. And people would come here screaming and hollering. Wives didn't want to move here. They had no knowledge about, where the area was. And yet, they came, they got involved in the school system, they got involved in their communities, and then you couldn't drag them away. So because of the great experience that people have had, because of the reputation of our major corporations. The other thing to remember about this area is we don't have the most Fortune 500 headquartered here, but we have the most Fortune 500 located here. Name a place, P&G's probably got 400 or 500 people here, Microsoft, Disney, name somebody, and they have a local presence here. And so because of that, that's another thing that is just spread throughout the country. I visit with people all day, every day. I'm pretty good about seeing whoever wants to visit with me regarding Northwest Arkansas. And almost all of them have been here because of business. So it is something that's changed dramatically. I think it's kind of like the snowball going down the hill. It's just going to continue to go and go. That's going to create more challenges for us with transportation, keeping people safe. We take all of these for granted. We talked about infrastructure, water issues, and making sure that we've got these basic things. They're not glamorous. Public transportation is an issue, that's going to become more and more important. These are things that we're going to have to deal with. The good news is that we do have a situation here that the communities do come together, and there's all kinds of examples. We hadn't talked about the importance Our community colleges, the great job that they've done, in getting people where they can make a living wage. The vocational education that's going on here that's regional, that is making a big difference. All of these things are just kind of the underpinning of the area. They're not glamorous, but they're so very important. We're really blessed here in a number of different ways regarding vocational education. When I went through, you had shop class and things like that. Now, this is really high tech. And so you're not only in high school, you're not only taking these courses, but you're actually earning a certificate. So you learn how to weld. But working with the community college, where you spend part of your time in the local high school, part of the time in the regional vocational, education classes, you actually come out with a certificate. And with that certificate, many of these people are making more money than they thought they'd ever be able to make. They can make a living wage. Same is true of healthcare. You can become a phlebotomist after the 10th grade, being able to draw blood. An LPN, by the time you graduate from high school, make a living wage there. Spend another year and have an RN degree and make a very good wage. So these are things that have improved dramatically. It's very possible now for a young person to have 2 years of college credit by the time they graduate from high school in various components. So this is something that we're doing a really good job. We need to do an even better job. The demographics are such that right now, if you look at healthcare, 40% of the providers of healthcare in Arkansas are 60 or older. I don't know what we're going to do in 10 years. Because the other problem is, unlike my wife Kathy and I, who started dating when we were 16, people don't do that anymore. People are getting married much later. They're having fewer children. As a result of that, there's just not as, if you look at the K through college numbers now, and these are just numbers, but there's many millions less than there was 6 or 7 years ago in those ranks. So not only are we having trouble attracting people into the vocational education, where you can, the numbers just aren't there anymore for anybody. And so we're starting to see that at our universities. And so this is a big demographic issue that we're going to have to resolve. We don't talk enough about it now, but it's one of the things that all of us, and we talked about the ability to work together to solve our problems, but this is something that's becoming a huge problem. In traveling, I get asked all the time, tell me about where you live, where you're from. And we're so blessed. You look at crime statistics, you look at infrastructure, you look at quality of life issues like education. Education's number one. You've got to, that's what families look at. Can you get a good education? Just the opportunities with Crystal Bridges now. Every restaurant that you can imagine, it seems like. The list goes on and on. So I think those of us that live here, you almost feel like you're on vacation all the time. This is the area. The other thing that I've learned to appreciate is in traveling throughout our country and then traveling overseas, again, representing military construction, looking at a lot of projects overseas that way, farm community. The list goes on and on, foreign affairs. I've been to lots of places. There simply are not, I'd rank this right at the very top. And not just saying that, because we're from here, but again, this is something we can be very, very proud. The other thing I would say is that we've got a lot to be thankful for, because a lot of people, these things don't just happen. There's been a lot of hard work to have the quality of life that we have here. There's lots of work going on now, a lot of sacrifice, a lot of people in formal position, politicians that way, but all of the people that contribute, like you're contributing in doing this, but all of the people that contribute in so many different ways to make this to have the opportunities that we have in this part of Arkansas, it really is remarkable. And that's something I think that really distinguishes them. distinguishes us from every place else. It's just the activities from the public. My favorite thing about Benton County is, I think just being able to do so much. If you want to play golf, good golf courses. I really enjoy going to the lake, to have that in the sense of it's someplace you can go and be by yourself and just really experience nature, seeing the big birds, the deer, although there's deer every place now. But I really enjoy the lake. And again, I think the key to our success and the key to why people want to live here is the people. And I'm not just saying that. This is a very, very friendly place. This is a place that people want to help others. You'd think that would be the way it is throughout the country, but it's simply not. And that's why we're attracting so many people from so many different states. I would just say that we have the ability to live amongst a lot of people, or just a lot of nice people that want to be kind, want to be helpful.